When I walked into the courtroom, my mother rolled her eyes in disgust, and my father couldn't even look at me. Suddenly the judge froze. She leaned forward and whispered, "Wait, is that really her?" The whole room fell silent. Nobody had any idea who I was. Least not yet. "Don't you dare embarrass us," my mother hissed as we walked through the courthouse doors. "Just stay quiet and let the real lawyers handle this." I didn't answer. I just kept walking, my heels clicking against the marble floor with the confidence I had spent years building. My father wouldn't even look at me. His gaze was fixed on a distant point, as if I were a stain he couldn't bear to acknowledge. Nothing new there. "My name is Anna. I'm 31 years old, and for most of my life, I've been the family disappointment. The dropout, the failure, the one they pretended didn't exist when relatives asked about their children." We were at the courthouse in Omaha, Nebraska, because my parents were trying to evict their tenant, a woman named Claire. Her crime? Daring to ask for repairs before paying rent on a building that was literally falling apart. My parents owned 3 rental properties, all inherited from my grandfather, and they ran them like their own personal kingdoms, just collecting money. Claire had been in one of their apartments for 2 years, always paying on time, until the ceiling started leaking and black mold grew in her daughter's bedroom. She had withheld rent and asked for the repairs to be done first. My parents responded by filing for eviction. She signed a contract. My mother had ranted over the phone 2 weeks ago. She doesn't get to just stop paying because she's picky about a little moisture. A little moisture. That's what she called black mold. I'd heard about the case through my younger sister Melissa, who still lived at home despite being 28. She'd mentioned it casually during one of our rare phone calls, not knowing I'd spent the last 7 years clawing my way through law school, working 3 jobs, sleeping in my car more nights than I could count, and finally passing the bar exam. I had done it all alone, without a single dollar or word of encouragement from them. They didn't even know I'd gone to college, let alone become an attorney. The day I'd walked out of their house at 19, my father had thrown my things onto the front lawn. "You're nothing," he shouted. "You'll never amount to anything without us." My mother had stood in the doorway with her arms crossed. "Don't come crawling back when you fail." I hadn't. Not even when I was sleeping in my car behind a grocery store, surviving on vending machine snacks. I didn't go back. Not even when I was so exhausted from working overnight shifts that I could barely stay awake in class. I would have rather starved than swallowed my pride and begged for help from the people who'd made it clear they thought I was worthless. Now, as we walked toward the courtroom, I watched my mother smooth down her expensive blouse and adjust her pearls. Appearances were always more important than anything else. My father walked beside her in his tailored suit, the very picture of respectability. They told everyone at their country club that they only had one daughter, Melissa, who worked as a receptionist and let them control every part of her life. "I don't know why you even came," my mother muttered as we neared the courtroom doors. "This doesn't concern you." I just smiled and said nothing. Let them think I was just here to watch. Let them think I was still the broken girl they'd thrown away. Inside, the courtroom air was thick with tension. Claire sat at the defendant's table, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She was a small woman in her 40s, wearing a dress that had seen better days. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and exhaustion was etched into every line on her face. This wasn't just about an apartment. It was about keeping a roof over her daughter's head. My parents took their seats, and my mother gestured for me to sit in the gallery behind them. I walked right past her, ignoring the command, and headed straight for Claire's table. I could feel my mother's eyes burning into my back, her mind racing to figure out what I was doing. "Excuse me," I said quietly to Claire. "I'm your attorney." Her eyes widened. I couldn't afford an attorney. I was going to represent myself. "Consider this pro bono," I said, setting down my briefcase. "I've reviewed your case. You have every right to withhold rent until those repairs are made. Your landlords violated the implied warranty of habitability." Behind me, I heard my mother's sharp gasp. My father's voice came next, low and furious. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I turned to face them, and for the first time in 12 years, I looked my parents directly in the eye. "I'm doing my job." My mother's face went from pale to red. "You can't be serious. You're not a lawyer." "Actually, I am." I pulled out my bar card and held it up. "I passed the bar 2 years ago." I've been working at a firm downtown, mostly handling tenant rights cases. This is my exact area of expertise. My father stood up, his hands clenched into fists. This is ridiculous. You dropped out of community college. You're a homeless bum we threw out for being a waste of space. I was homeless for a while, yes, I said calmly. Thanks to you. But I worked my way through school. I graduated from college, then law school. And I did it all without a single cent from you. The judge entered before my father could respond, and everyone scrambled to their seats. Judge Patricia Holbrook was in her 60s, with steel gray hair and a no-nonsense demeanor that made even experienced lawyers nervous. She looked over the courtroom, her eyes settling on me with a flicker of recognition. "Counsel, please approach," she said. I walked up to the bench and my parents' attorney, a man named Gerald who charged $500 an hour, joined me. Judge Holbrook looked between us, then at the papers before her. "I see we have representation for the defendant now," she said. "Counselor Anna Thompson, Your Honor," I said. "I'm representing Claire Mitchell." Judge Holbrook's eyebrows rose slightly. "Anna Thompson? I thought that name looked familiar. Didn't you argue the Riverside Apartments case last year?" "Yes, Your Honor. You won that case if I recall. The tenants got everything they asked for. Repairs, rent reimbursement and damages." "That's correct, Your Honor." She looked at my parents, then back at me, and something in her expression shifted. "This should be interesting. Let's proceed." As I walked back to my table, I caught my mother's expression. Pure horror mixed with disbelief. My father looked like he'd been slapped. Melissa, sitting behind them, had her hand over her mouth, her eyes wide. I sat down next to Claire, who was staring at me like I just walked on water. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know how to thank you. Just tell the truth when you're asked questions," I said. "That's all you need to do." Gerald stood up first, presenting my parents' case. He painted Claire as a difficult tenant looking for excuses not to pay, making mountains out of molehills over minor maintenance issues. He showed old photos of the apartment from when it was first rented, pristine and clean. "The plaintiffs have always maintained their properties to the highest standards," Gerald said smoothly. "They are responsible landlords who simply want what they're owed. The rent agreed upon in a legally binding contract." When it was my turn, I walked to the evidence table. I'd spent the last 2 weeks gathering everything I needed. Photos of the leaking ceiling and black mold, the broken windows that wouldn't close properly, medical records showing Claire's daughter had developed respiratory problems, ignored maintenance requests, and even a city inspector's report that condemned parts of the building as uninhabitable. "Your Honor," I began, laying out the evidence piece by piece. "The defendant didn't withhold rent out of spite. She withheld it because the apartment she was paying for had become a health hazard. Nebraska law is clear. Landlords must maintain properties in a condition fit for human habitation. When they fail to do so, tenants have the legal right to withhold rent until repairs are made." I walked the judge through every violation, every ignored request, every broken promise. My parents had collected rent for months knowing the building was falling apart. They'd threatened Claire when she complained, telling her she could leave if she didn't like it, fully aware she couldn't afford to break her lease. "This isn't about a difficult tenant," I said. "This is about landlords who saw their tenants as nothing more than a revenue stream, who cared more about money than the safety of the people living in their buildings." Judge Holbrook listened intently, taking notes and asking pointed questions. When I showed her the medical records for Claire's daughter, her jaw tightened. "Counselor," she said to Gerald, "did your clients know about the mold?" Gerald shuffled his papers. "They were aware of some moisture issues, but—" "Did they know about the mold?" she repeated. "Yes, Your Honor, but they dispute that it was as severe as the tenant claims. The city inspector's report says otherwise." Judge Holbrook looked at my parents, her expression one of barely concealed disgust. "In fact, it says this entire unit should have been vacated months ago." My mother opened her mouth, but my father grabbed her arm, stopping her. Judge Holbrook turned back to me. "Continue, Counselor." I presented the rest of my evidence, building the case brick by brick. By the time I finished, there was no doubt in anyone's mind that my parents had been negligent landlords at best, and criminally negligent at worst. They'd put a child's health at risk for $1,200 a month. Your Honor, I said in closing, my client isn't asking for much. She is asking for what she's legally entitled to, a safe place to live. She is asking for the conditions that forced her to withhold rent to be remedied, and she's asking for reimbursement for the medical expenses her daughter incurred as a direct result of living in this unsafe environment. I sat down and Claire reached over to squeeze my hand. Her eyes were filled with tears, but they were tears of relief, not despair. Judge Holbrook looked at my parents for a long moment. I'll be honest with you, she said. I've seen a lot of landlord-tenant disputes in my years on the bench, but this is one of the more egregious cases I've encountered. My mother's face had gone from red to white. My father looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. I'm ruling in favor of the defendant, Judge Holbrook continued. Not only will the eviction be dismissed, but the plaintiffs will be required to make all necessary repairs within 30 days. Additionally, they will reimburse the defendant for 3 months of rent and all medical expenses related to her daughter's respiratory issues. And just so we're clear, if these repairs aren't completed to code within the specified time frame, I will personally refer this case to the city for further action. She banged her gavel and it was over. Claire broke down sobbing, thanking me over and over. I helped her gather her things, walking her out of the courtroom as she clung to my arm like a lifeline. Behind us, I could hear my parents arguing with Gerald in hushed, furious voices. Outside, Claire hugged me tightly. You saved us, she said. I don't know how I'll ever repay you. You don't have to, I said. Just take care of your daughter. She left, still crying, and I stood there for a moment, letting the weight of what just happened settle over me. 12 years. 12 years of being told I was worthless, of being treated like I didn't exist, of fighting every single day to prove them wrong. And in one afternoon, I'd done it in the most public way possible. I was gathering my things when I heard footsteps. I turned to find my mother standing there, her face contorted with rage. How dare you, she spat. How dare you humiliate us like that? I did my job, I said calmly. Your job? You call destroying your own family your job. You're not my family, I said, the words coming out flat and emotionless. You stopped being my family the day you threw me out with nothing. My father appeared beside her, his face purple with anger. You ungrateful little. I'm not the one who should be ashamed here. I cut him off. You put a child's health at risk because you were too cheap to fix a leaking roof. You're lucky Judge Holbrook didn't refer you for criminal charges. We raised you, my mother said, her voice breaking. We gave you everything. I laughed, a bitter sound that echoed in the empty hallway. You gave me nothing. Everything I have I earned on my own. And you know what? I'm glad you threw me out. It taught me exactly who you are. People who care more about money and appearances than doing what's right. I walked right past them, my head held high, leaving them standing there in their expensive clothes with their shattered pride. But even as I walked away, I knew this wasn't over. My mother never let anything go. And neither did my father. I drove back to my office in a daze, replaying the scene in my head. The look on the judge's face, the horror in my parents' eyes, the gratitude in Claire's voice. It all felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life. The firm I worked for, Kestrel & Associates, was in a renovated downtown warehouse. It wasn't fancy, exposed brick walls, second-hand furniture, mismatched coffee mugs, but it was home. The senior partner, Diane Kestrel, had given me my first real break. She'd seen something in me. A drive that made her take a chance on a woman with no connections and a resume that listed lived-in car as work experience. I'd been there for 2 years taking cases bigger firms wouldn't touch. Tenant rights, workers' comp, disability claims. The kind of law that didn't make anyone rich but helped people who desperately needed it. Diane always said we were in the business of leveling playing fields, and I believed her. This job had given me a purpose. When I walked into the office, Diane was waiting. She waved me into the conference room, and I could tell from her expression she'd already heard. Word traveled fast in legal circles. You did good work today, she said as I sat down. Claire called me right after. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her, but she wanted me to know what you did. I just presented the facts, I said. No, Diane shook her head. You gave her hope. You showed her the system could work for people like her. That's not nothing, Anna. I felt my throat tighten. Thank you. But we need to talk about something else. Diane's expression grew serious. Your parents. They're not going to let this go, are they? No, I admitted. They're not. Do you think they'll retaliate? I know they will. I thought about the look in my mother's eyes. They'll try to discredit me, ruin my reputation. They have money and connections. They'll use both. Diane was quiet for a moment. We'll deal with it when it comes. But you need to be prepared. People like your parents, when they feel cornered, they can be dangerous. They'll go after everything you've built. I know, I said. But I couldn't just stand by and watch them hurt people. Not anymore. I understand. And for what it's worth, I'm proud of you. What you did today took courage. After Diane left, I sat alone, staring out at the Omaha skyline. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. It was beautiful, but I couldn't shake the feeling that a storm was coming. My phone buzzed. A text from Melissa. Mom and Dad are furious. They're talking about suing you. Please be careful. I didn't respond. What was there to say? Of course they were furious. Of course they wanted revenge. That's who they were. But I'd faced worse than their anger. I'd survived homelessness, poverty, and years of their abuse. Whatever they threw at me, I could handle it. At least that's what I told myself. As I packed up to leave, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Anna Thompson? A man's voice asked. Yes. Who is this? My name is Henry Bradford. I was your grandfather's attorney. I need to speak with you about something urgent. Something your parents don't know about. My heart started racing. What is it? Not over the phone. Can you meet me tomorrow morning? 9 a.m. at my office. Yes, I'll be there. He gave me the address and hung up. I stood there holding my phone, my mind spinning. What could my grandfather's attorney want after all these years? My grandfather had died 12 years ago. What could possibly be urgent now? I had a feeling I was about to find out, and something told me it was going to change everything. Henry Bradford's office was in an old downtown building with marble floors and brass fixtures that screamed 1920s. I arrived at 9 a.m. sharp, my stomach churning. A receptionist led me to a corner office where Henry sat behind a massive oak desk. He was in his 70s, with white hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He stood when I entered. Anna, thank you for coming on such short notice. You said it was urgent, I replied, shaking his hand. What's this about? He gestured for me to sit and pulled a thick folder from his desk. I was your grandfather's attorney for 40 years. When he died, I handled his estate. But there was one provision in his will that was kept sealed, to be opened only under specific conditions. My pulse quickened. What kind of provision? Your grandfather loved you very much, Anna. He saw how your parents treated you and it broke his heart. So he made arrangements to protect you. Henry opened the folder and slid a document across the desk. He established a trust fund in your name. $50,000 to be released when you turn 30, or when you obtained a professional degree, whichever came first. I stared at the document, speechless. $50,000? It was more money than I'd ever imagined having. You passed the bar exam 2 years ago, Henry continued. That met the conditions. The money has been sitting in trust, accumulating interest. It's now worth nearly $60,000. Why didn't you tell me sooner? My voice was a whisper. Your grandfather's instructions were explicit. The trust was to remain confidential. He didn't want your parents to know, to interfere, or to try and claim it. He knew them too well. I thought about my grandfather, the quiet man who always had a kind word for me. He was the only one who believed in me. There's something else, Henry said, pulling out an envelope. Your grandfather wrote you a letter. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper covered in his careful handwriting. Dear Anna, if you're reading this, then you've done what I always knew you could do. You've made something of yourself despite everything. I'm so proud of you. I know your parents have made your life difficult. I watched them favor your sister, watched them tear you down. It broke my heart, but I couldn't change them. All I could do was give you a foundation to build on. This money isn't a solution, but it's a start. Build the life you deserve. And remember, you are worth more than they will ever understand. There's one more thing. I was planning to change my will to leave you half of everything. Half the properties, half my savings. You deserved it. But I ran out of time. Be careful, Anna. Your parents are not good people. They care more about money than anything, even family. Don't let them destroy you. You're stronger than they are. Love always, Grandpa. Tears streamed down my face. He had been planning to change his will. He died before he could do it. There's something you should know, Henry said gently. The week before your grandfather died, your mother came to see me. She was asking about his will, about any recent changes. I didn't tell her anything, of course, but she was very persistent. A chill ran down my spine. You think she knew he was planning to change it? I can't say for certain, but the timing was suspicious. Your grandfather was in perfect health one week, and dead the next. Heart failure, they said. But he just had a physical, and his doctor said he had the heart of a man 20 years younger. What are you saying? Henry leaned back. I'm saying that when someone stands to lose a significant inheritance, they might do things they wouldn't otherwise. I'm saying your grandfather's death was very convenient for your parents. And I'm saying that if you look closely, you might find some questions that were never properly answered. My mind was reeling. Was he suggesting my parents had something to do with my grandfather's death? I have no proof, Henry continued. Just an old lawyer's suspicions. But I thought you should know. Especially now. They've shown you what they're capable of when their money is threatened. Imagine what they might do if the stakes were even higher. I left Henry's office in a daze, clutching the folder. $60,000. It was enough to pay off my student loans, to finally have an emergency fund, to finally breathe. But all I could think about was what Henry said. Your grandfather's death was very convenient for your parents. I drove to the public library and spent hours digging through old newspaper archives. I found my grandfather's obituary, died peacefully at home. But then I found a smaller article, a letter to the editor from his physician, Dr. Russell Hayes, expressing shock at the sudden death of a patient he just declared healthy. I found Dr. Hayes's contact info. He was retired, but the receptionist gave me his home number. He answered on the third ring. Dr. Hayes, my name is Anna Thompson. I'm calling about my grandfather, James Thompson. There was a pause. James Thompson. Yes, I remember him. A good man. His death was such a shock. Can I ask you something? You wrote a letter to the paper saying you were surprised. Why? Another pause, longer this time. Are you asking as his granddaughter? Or in some other capacity? I'm an attorney, and I have reason to believe there might have been something suspicious about his death. Meet me at Elmwood Park in an hour, Dr. Hayes said. There's something you need to know. Dr. Hayes was sitting on a bench near the pond, feeding breadcrumbs to ducks. He was in his 80s now, with stooped shoulders, but his eyes were sharp. Thank you for meeting me, I said. He kept tossing breadcrumbs. I've carried this guilt for 12 years. Maybe it's time to let it go. What guilt? Your grandfather came to see me 2 days before he died. He was having symptoms. Nausea, dizziness, tingling. I ran some tests, but the results wouldn't be back for a week. I told him it was probably nothing and sent him home. What were the test results? They showed elevated levels of digoxin in his blood. Digoxin is a heart medication, but your grandfather wasn't taking any. The levels were high enough to cause arrhythmia, heart failure. High enough to kill someone. My breath caught. You're saying he was poisoned? I'm saying someone gave him digoxin, probably in his food or drink. By the time the results came back, he was already dead. I went to the police, but they said there wasn't enough evidence. The medical examiner ruled it natural causes. Without an autopsy showing clear poisoning, they wouldn't pursue it. Why didn't you push harder? Dr. Hayes finally looked at me, and I saw the shame in his eyes. Your father came to see me. He said the family wanted to remember James peacefully, without the trauma of an investigation. He said it would destroy your grandmother. And he offered me money. A lot of money. To let it go. You took the money. To my eternal shame, yes. I was 3 years from retirement. My wife had just been diagnosed with cancer. We needed it. So I told myself I was seeing conspiracies where there were none. I let them bury your grandfather without answers. I felt sick. My father had bribed a doctor to stay quiet about evidence of poisoning. which meant he knew. Dr. Hayes, would you be willing to testify to this? To put it in a sworn statement. He nodded slowly. Yes. I'm old now, and my wife passed away 5 years ago. I don't need their blood money anymore. If you're going after them, I'll help you. I got Dr. Hayes' statement recorded and notarized that afternoon, then went straight to the district attorney's office. The DA, a sharp woman named Catherine Morris, listened to everything. She looked at the documents, read the statement, and leaned back in her chair. This is serious, she said. But it's been 12 years. Physical evidence will be long gone. We need more than just elevated digoxin levels and a doctor's suspicions. What about motive? I asked. My grandfather was about to change his will. They stood to lose millions. His attorney can testify that my mother was asking about the will right before he died. That's circumstantial. We need something concrete. Bank records showing they were in trouble. Proof they purchased digoxin. Something. I left the DA's office feeling frustrated. But then I remembered something. My mother kept meticulous records of everything, receipts, bills, transactions. She was obsessed with documentation. I called Melissa. I wasn't sure she'd answer, but she did. Anna, she said quietly. Melissa, I need your help. And I have to tell you something first. I think they killed Grandpa. Silence. Then, what? I told her everything. The trust fund, the suspicious death. Dr. Hayes' statement about the poisoning, the bribe. That's impossible, Melissa said, but her voice wavered. They wouldn't. They couldn't. They put a child's health at risk for money, I said. They threw me onto the street. What makes you think they're above murder? Melissa was quiet for a long time. Then she said, what do you need? Mom keeps records, right? Financial documents from 12 years ago. Yes. She keeps everything in the storage room in the basement, organized by year. I need you to look for anything from the months before Grandpa died. Bank statements, credit card bills, pharmacy receipts. Anything showing they were in financial trouble, or that they bought digoxin. Anna, I can't just go through their private files. Yes, you can. Because if I'm right, they murdered our grandfather. And they've spent the last 12 years living off that blood money. Don't you want to know the truth? Another long silence. Then I'll look. But Anna, if I find something, what happens to them? They go to prison, I said simply. For the rest of their lives. And what happens to me? I didn't have an answer for that. Because if our parents went to prison for murder, Melissa would be left completely alone. I'm sorry, I said finally. But the truth matters more than our comfort. I'll call you tomorrow, Melissa said and hung up. I had just asked my sister to betray our parents to help me send them to prison. And a large part of me felt nothing but cold determination. The next 24 hours were the longest of my life. Then the next evening Melissa called. I found something, she said, her voice shaking. Anna, I found something bad. We met at a coffee shop on the edge of town. Melissa looked pale and hollow-eyed. She slid a folder across the table. I went through everything, she said. Bank statements, credit card bills. I found these. I opened the folder. Inside were copies of credit card statements from the months before our grandfather died. Melissa had highlighted several entries. This one, she pointed, is for Digitalis purpurea seeds. That's foxglove. It contains digoxin. You can extract it. My heart pounded. They bought the poison. That's not all. She pulled out more papers. Look at these bank statements. 2 months before he died. Their checking account was overdrawn by $30,000. They had maxed out 3 credit cards. They were drowning in debt. My parents had been nearly bankrupt. And then, conveniently, my grandfather died and they inherited everything. There's more, Melissa said quietly, pulling out a small notebook. I found this hidden in Mom's desk. It's her handwriting. I opened it. The first few pages were grocery lists, appointment reminders. But then I found a page dated 3 weeks before my grandfather's death. Jay says he's changing the will. Giving half to Anna. Can't let that happen. We'll lose everything. Need to act fast. My hand shook as I turned the page. Research shows digoxin hard to detect. Natural compound could look like heart failure. Jay takes tea every morning. Easy to add. The next entries were dosage calculations, research notes. The final entry was dated the day after my grandfather died. It's done. Doctor said heart failure. No one suspects. We're safe. Properties are ours. I looked up at Melissa. She was crying silently. She killed him, she whispered. Mom killed Grandpa. She planned it. And Dad must have known. He helped cover it up. I carefully photographed every page with my phone. Are you willing to testify to where you found these? She nodded, wiping her eyes. I have to. I can't protect them anymore. Not after this. Grandpa was good to us. He loved us. And they killed him for money. Melissa, once we take this to the police, there's no going back. They'll be arrested. They'll go to trial. I know. Her voice was small but steady. But it's the right thing to do. You taught me that in the courtroom. You showed me what it means to do the right thing, even when it's hard. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Thank you. Grandpa deserves justice, she said. And you deserved better. I'm sorry it took me so long to see that. We went to the police station together. The DA, Catherine Morris, was called in. We laid out everything. The trust, the doctor's statement, the financial records, the notebook. Catherine's expression grew darker with each piece of evidence. This is enough, she said finally. We can get a warrant. We'll arrest them tonight. Tonight. Melissa's voice cracked. The longer we wait, the more chance they have to destroy evidence or run. We need to move fast. 2 hours later, I sat in Catherine's office, watching on a monitor as police officers arrived at my parents' house. Melissa sat beside me, gripping my hand. We watched our mother answer the door in her expensive robe, watched her face change from confusion to horror as the officers read her rights. We watched our father try to bluster his way out of it, watched him be handcuffed and led to a patrol car. It's real, Melissa whispered. It's really happening. I felt numb. All those years of being told I was worthless, all of it came from people who were capable of murder. The arraignment was the next morning. Charges of first-degree murder, evidence tampering, and fraud. Bail was set at $2 million, the amount of my grandfather's life insurance policy. They couldn't pay it. Their assets were frozen. My parents would sit in jail awaiting trial. The news spread like wildfire. Prominent landlords arrested for murder. Woman discovers parents killed grandfather. My face was everywhere. I was the heroic daughter. My parents were the monsters. 3 days later, a call came from a lawyer representing Claire, the tenant I defended. Anna, you need to know something. After your parents were arrested, other tenants came forward. One of them, a man named Thomas, said your father threatened him last year. Told him if he didn't drop his complaints about a broken furnace, he'd end up like your grandfather. Thomas thought it was just a figure of speech. But now it sounds like a confession, I finished. My father had practically admitted to it, had used my grandfather's death as a threat. The arrogance made me sick. That evening Melissa and I met at my apartment. She looked lost, but there was a new clarity in her eyes. I keep thinking about all the signs I missed, she said. The way they talked about Grandpa after he died like they were relieved. The way they spent money. How they always discouraged me from asking questions. You were young, I said. You trusted them. I shouldn't have. I should have stood up for you. Can you forgive me? There's nothing to forgive, I said. You were caught in their web too. You broke free. That's what matters. What happens now? She asked. Now we wait for trial. We testify. We make sure they never hurt anyone else again. And after that? I thought about it. Melissa and I would have each other. We could build something new, something better. We could be the family we never had. After that, I said, we figure out how to move forward. Together. Melissa smiled, a fragile but genuine smile. Together, she repeated. Tomorrow would bring more headlines, more pain. But tonight, sitting with my sister, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I felt like maybe finally things were going to be okay. The trial began 6 months later. The courtroom was packed. I sat in the front row with Melissa. Across the aisle, my parents sat with their public defender. My mother, in an orange jumpsuit, looked like she'd aged a decade. My father just sat hunched over, defeated. Judge Holbrook presided, and when she saw me, she gave a slight nod. The prosecution's case was devastating. Catherine Morris presented the financial records, the notebook with my mother's cold calculations, and Dr. Hayes's testimony about the bribe. Henry Bradford read my grandfather's final wishes aloud. Thomas, the former tenant, recounted my father's threat. When Melissa took the stand, her voice was steady as she described finding the notebook detailing the plan to poison our grandfather. "Why did you come forward?" Catherine asked. Melissa looked at me, then at the jury. "Because my grandfather was a good man. He didn't deserve to die for money. And my sister didn't deserve to be thrown away like garbage. The truth matters more than protecting people who don't deserve it." My mother started sobbing, but no one was buying it. When it was my turn, I told the jury everything. The abuse, the favoritism, the years of struggle. My mother's lawyer tried to paint me as vindictive. "Isn't it true you've wanted revenge?" he asked. "I didn't want revenge," I said. "I wanted justice. For my grandfather and for all the people they hurt. If that brings consequences, it's because of their choices, not mine. But you benefit from this, don't you? If they're convicted, you inherit everything." "I don't want their money," I said, and I meant it. I built my own life without them. The inheritance can go to their victims. The jury deliberated for just 4 hours. "On the count of first-degree murder, how do you find?" "Guilty." My mother collapsed, wailing. My father sat motionless. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing day was 2 weeks later. Judge Holbrook looked down at my parents with profound disappointment. "You murdered your own father for money. You calculated the dosage, administered the poison, and watched him die. And then you spent 12 years living comfortably while your daughter, the one he wanted to protect, struggled to survive." She sentenced them both to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As they were led away, my mother turned to me one last time, her eyes full of pure hate. "I hope you're satisfied," she spat. "You've destroyed this family." "No," I said, standing up so she could hear me clearly. "You destroyed this family when you chose greed over love. I just made sure everyone knew the truth." Outside, reporters swarmed. "How do you feel?" one shouted. "Relieved," I said honestly. "Not happy, just relieved they can't hurt anyone else." "Will you accept the inheritance?" "No. Everything they have will go to a fund for their former tenants. That's what my grandfather would have wanted." "What's next for you?" "I'm going to keep doing what I've been doing. Helping people who need it. Making sure landlords are held accountable." That night, Melissa and I went to my grandfather's grave. "We got them, Grandpa," Melissa said softly. I knelt beside her. "I'm sorry it took so long. I hope you know I never forgot what you told me. That I was worth more than they said. You were right." We sat in silence for a while. "What happens to us now?" Melissa asked. "We're orphans in a way. We built something new," I said. "Something better. We become the family we never had." "I'd like that," she smiled. "You know, I've been thinking about going back to school. Maybe becoming a paralegal, working with you." "Diane would love that," I said. "It's strange," Melissa mused. "I spent my whole life trying to be what they wanted, the perfect, obedient daughter. And it was all for nothing. They didn't really love me. They just loved that I was easy to control." "That was their failing," I said. "Not yours and not mine." As we walked back to the car, I felt something shift inside me. The anger that had driven me for so long, the need to prove myself, it was fading. Not gone, but quieter. "Anna," Melissa said as we drove away, "thank you for not giving up, for showing me what courage looks like." "You showed courage too," I replied, coming forward with that evidence. "That took a strength I'm not sure I would have had." "We were both strong," she said, "just in different ways. But we're stronger together." I smiled. "Yeah, we are." The road ahead was long, but for the first time in my life, I wasn't facing it alone. 3 months later, I stood in the conference room at my firm, looking at the faces of 23 of my parents' former tenants. "The court has ordered the liquidation of all assets belonging to Helen and Robert Thompson," I explained. "After fees, there's approximately $1.8 million remaining. That money will be divided among all of you, the verified victims." A man in the back stood up. "That money should go to you. You're the one who brought them down." I shook my head. I didn't do this for money. I did it because it was right. This belongs to the people they hurt. After the meeting, Diane, my boss, came in. That was a good thing you did. By the way, I'm thinking about retiring in a few years. I'd like you to consider becoming a partner. Eventually, taking over the firm. I just stared at her. Are you serious? Completely. You're the best attorney I've ever trained. This firm needs someone like you at the helm. Think about it. That evening, I met Melissa for dinner. She'd started her paralegal classes and looked healthier than I'd seen her in years. I told her about Diane's offer. That's incredible, she said. Grandpa would be so proud. You became exactly who he knew you could be. We talked about normal things. It felt strange and wonderful. I saw them last week, Melissa said suddenly. At the prison. I needed closure. Mom tried to guilt trip me. Dad just cried and said he was sorry. But even now, they can't admit they were wrong. Some people never can, I said. That's not your burden anymore. I know, she smiled. That was goodbye for good. Later, she handed me an envelope. Another letter from Grandpa. Henry gave it to me. He said Grandpa wanted you to have it when everything was settled. My hands trembled as I read. Dear Anna, if you're reading this, you've uncovered the truth. I suspected they might try something. That's why I left clues, to give you the tools to find justice. I'm so proud of you. Not just for your accomplishments but for your character. You have a strength they'll never understand. Use it well. And remember, the best revenge is living well. Becoming someone they said you could never be. You've already won, Anna. You are loved. You are worthy. You are enough. Always, Grandpa. Tears streamed down my face. He knew, I whispered. He knew what they might do, and he still tried to protect me. He loved you, Melissa said. Really loved you. I folded the letter and put it in my pocket. I'm going to keep fighting, I said. For people like Claire, for everyone who gets trampled by power and money. That's how I'll honor him. And I'll help you, Melissa said. We'll be a team. A team? I smiled through my tears. I like that. My parents spent their remaining years in prison. Their legacy was one of greed and cruelty. As for me, I took over the firm. Melissa worked beside me, a brilliant paralegal. We built something good from the ashes of our broken family. I never married or had kids. My family became the people I helped, the justice I fought for, and the sister who found her courage when it mattered most. Sometimes, late at night, I take out my grandfather's letters and remember that the best revenge isn't destruction. It's becoming everything they said you couldn't be, and using that success to help others. That was victory enough. After a story like that, it's hard not to think about the secrets people keep, and the incredible strength it takes to bring the truth to light. It's a powerful reminder that we're all on our own unique journeys, facing battles that no one else can see. These are the moments that connect us as human beings, navigating the good, the bad, and everything in between. If this story resonated with you, let us know by hitting that like button. Your thoughts and feedback are what keep this channel going and inspire us to bring you even more compelling content. And if you want to be here for the next story, make sure you subscribe and ring that notification bell. Thanks for watching.